All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Armchair Armdrager podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ben Hersick. Again, I want to apologize. This was kind of last minute. I didn't think I would have been as busy as I was on Thursday, so I thought I could have recorded a podcast and gotten it up today on Friday, but it just wasn't in the cards for yesterday. So we're a day late, but that's how it's going to be. There's not really too much going on in the world of pro wrestling right now. There's no real big pay-per-view builds, even though there kind of should be. I'll address that here in a little bit. But also, there is a fun time coming up. If you can't guess by the title, we're on the road to the Royal Rumble, which is also known as one of my favorite matches of the year. I'll explain why, and I want to talk about a little early scenario booking and a couple possible winners to keep your eyes on as we get closer to the actual show itself. But first, as always, how I start these episodes, following me on Twitter because that's the social media that I use the most. And it's a fun way to engage with people. Some people enjoy my tweets, some people don't. Whatever. It doesn't affect me either way. Although it's nice to actually have people who have intelligent conversations on there sometimes. You can follow myself on Twitter at ChurroSolider. Churro Soldier. I spelled it right now. I fixed that and I keep forgetting that I fixed it. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast at Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat, which is a website that I write for where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA. I'm still working on my end-of-the-year lists. I believe they start coming out next week. Yes, next week. I believe the 12th is when the first one comes out. That's what I remember off the top of my head, I think. Is that right, phone? The 11th. I was close. So yeah, the first one comes out the 11th, and we have different top 10s for the pro wrestling year coming out every single day afterwards until December 22nd, which ends with the top 10 men's wrestlers of the year. So there's those three. Also, I am the sports editor over at The Cauldron at Cleveland State, and you can follow us on Twitter at CSU Cauldron. Our last issue of the semester just went out on Tuesday. I had 3 articles in it. All 3 will be linked in the description below. I have one talking about the Cleveland State wrestling team. I have one covering Cleveland State women's basketball, who are on a 6-game win streak. At the time I wrote it, they were on a math and calendars. They're on a 5-game win streak then, which now it's at 6. And I also have an opinion piece on the importance of time management in college. Well, in general, but mostly in college. So let's start with kind of the issue that is going on with TLC. We're almost a week away from the show. We're about, numbers again, 9 days away from the show. And we have no matches announced. 0. This is annoying, but also it kind of makes sense. So I was listening to Cultaholic, and they were talking about it today. The possible reason we have no official matches is because the network numbers go up for that. So apparently, more people buy the WWE Network subscription or subscribe to the WWE Network the day of the show. So that could be a reason why we haven't seen anything yet. Next pay-per-view, we're going to know probably the World Championship matches and maybe we'll know most of the entrants in the Royal Rumble. There's that. That'll be interesting to see. But also, it's annoying because of the fact that I enjoyed making my predictions live and having a fun time and actually knowing what we're going to be seeing before the show. Right now, we can assume we're going to see a few matches. We can assume, that we're going to see, what's-his-faces? The Fiend versus Daniel Bryan. We're going to see Reigns versus Corbin. We're going to see Rusev Lashley. Possibly a United States Championship ladder match, a multi-man with AJ Styles, Randy Orton, Humberto Carrillo, Rey Mysterio, Ricochet, and Drew McIntyre. I'm forgetting somebody. No, that's right. That's 6. That's the 6. What else? Viking Raiders don't have a feud right now. New Day doesn't have a feud right now. Nakamura doesn't really have much going on. Kind of kicking around the mid-card. He's looked good, but he doesn't have anything going on. So, there's a couple matches we kind of can assume are going to happen. Bayley defending her title possibly, and it seems more than likely we're going to get Charlotte and Becky versus the Kabuki Warriors for the Women's Tag Team Championships. I'm a little bit of two minds of that, but that's not for this episode. It's just really annoying that we're so close to a show, yet we don't know every single match for that show. So it's like, how are we supposed to know what to expect and who to see when in actuality, we actually don't know who's going to be performing in what matches? Are we going to see a TLC match? Is there going to be a chairs match, which is aka the worst stipulation to have? So it's probably going to get stuck with Roman versus Corbin. Are we going to see a tables match? Who's going to get the TLC match? It's rumored it could be the tag team title match for the women, so that would be interesting. But also, does that possibly set up Becky versus Charlotte for the 50,000th time that we don't want to see? It's an issue like that where they need to focus on it, and they need to have the main feuds. You can have like the main feuds, like championship feuds, can be announced before the show, but like small feuds, like, for example, from Hell in a Cell, when we didn't know a lot of the match card before the show, like 2 hours before, we got like 5 matches thrown at us. But like, say, like with that, you had Ali versus Orton. No build, no story going in, but just 2 guys that were like, hey, let's put them together and see what happens. And lo and behold, they both worked together pretty well, I think. But it's like stuff like that. You can have like little small matches that are like one-offs maybe, to like set things in motion and be like, okay, this person's getting a push here, this person's getting a push there, and so on and so forth. That could be very beneficial to pay-per-views in the future. Is that going to be what we see? I don't know. I'm not sure. We're probably not going to know until at least middle of next week, even what matches could be happening. But one thing is for certain. One thing is for certain in WWE. We've got a return, and I'm surprised that they announced it on Backstage. Here's the thing, I don't mind the idea of WWE Backstage. I like Backstage. I like that they got Punk on it, and and it's pretty much an unfiltered take. Because I feel like if it was filtered, Paige wouldn't have been saying all these bad things about Seth Rollins, and we wouldn't see this slow burn of a heel turn. But it got a god-awful time spot. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast. That can help with like the Midwest. And it's 11 p.m. EST, which it helps with maybe the Central Time Zone and Mountain and West Coast. But like, for me to watch it, I have school. Oh no, Wednesday I don't. I have work in the morning, so I'm like, why would you have it at this hour when I have to be asleep so I can go to my job the next day? It's like a little annoying thing, and you can't really change it. You can put it on FS2, but even less people get FS2 compared to FS1, so who really knows what the real solution is there? But on Backstage, they hired Ryan Satin as a backstage, as like their little insider, like their I can never say his name right the first try. Adrian Wojciechowski and like Adam Schefter are for ESPN with the NBA and NFL respectively. He's like their little insider. He gets all the inside information from WWE. We don't hear his stuff from anything from him from New Japan, from AEW, NXT probably we do. It would make sense, I guess. We don't hear like stuff from everywhere. We just hear it from WWE. Because like even Schefter will report, like Schefter will like text in somebody from ESPN to tell them, hey, this news came out from the NFL Network, and they'll cite the NFL Network. Like if news comes out from Dave Meltzer, I'm not sure if Ryan Satin could quote that on WWE Backstage. But it was announced that John Morrison is returning to WWE, and I'm of two minds of the return. On a fan level, I'm very happy he's back, and I enjoyed the John Morrison run that we got for a little while. Was I annoyed when he never won the World Championship? Absolutely. I thought Morrison was more than deserving of it. And now as a wiser, possibly wiser, older professional wrestling fan, I would love to see Morrison get a run as world champion. Do I think it happens? I honestly have no clue. He worked well in Lucha Underground. He worked well in Impact Wrestling. He worked well somewhere else that I am forgetting. But he worked well there. So, like from an in-ring standpoint, it makes sense. from a professional standpoint, it makes sense. From an announcing standpoint, it's kind of weird. Why not wait until the Royal Rumble, have Morrison be a surprise entrant, and then 2 nights later on that backstage announced he signed a full-time deal, a multi-year deal, because I'm pretty sure it's a multi-year. It might be a 2-3 year deal to start with, because of the fact I know the Hardys deal is coming up in early, well, Matt's deal at least is coming up in early 2020. I want to say like March-ish. So Matt could walk then. Does Matt walk? I don't think. Now he's got 3 kids. I think he stays. Also, congratulations to Matt and Rebby Hardy on the birth of their 3rd child. So I think Matt stays. I feel like that's pretty secure. But with Morrison, it would be a 3-year deal because the Hardys returned to 34, and this is getting a WrestleMania 34, and this is getting ready to be 36. Well, no, it's a 2-year deal. Morrison might have signed it's a 2 to 5. I know that much. I don't think it's a 1-year deal. And it's going to be interesting to see. Like, I'm the only thing I'm mad about with Morrison returning is the way they announced it. You couldn't have just waited a month, a month and a half, I guess. But still, you couldn't have waited a month and a half to 2 months and then announced that, oh yeah, by the way, this guy signed, and he's going to be on your TV screens for a while. And he's going to be on SmackDown, and he's going to team with The Miz, and they're going to get one more run as tag team champions. That's what I want. Is that what's going to happen? I don't know, maybe. But I feel like if you put him in NXT, it could work. But you would probably go with the John Morrison name, because I was thinking if you put him in NXT and you call him Johnny Takeover, instant feud right there with Gargano. It would have made sense to me. And you could have held off on Gargano Balor for just a little bit longer. So that is the Morrison return. And it's going to be interesting because his wife's contract, Taya Valkyrie, is also up, I believe, early next year. Like, really early. I want to say January-ish. It'll be interesting to see if Valkyrie also makes the jump over, because I know WWE is interested. And that would also mean she has to drop the Impact Women's Championship. I know her next defense is set to be against Jordynne Grace at Hard to Kill, which is for people who are out of the loop for Impact Wrestling, except for maybe the main event scene. That's the same event where Sami Callihan versus Tessa Blanchard for Callahan's Impact World Championship is happening. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be an interesting development. I'm not somebody who's like super high on Taya Valkyrie. I'll admit she's talented. And I've said this to people before. I don't have to like a wrestler to admit they're talented. For example, and this one gets he gets a lot of controversy, Joey Ryan. I personally am not a Joey Ryan fan. I prefer work rate and actual in-ring skill to character work. Am I saying Joey Ryan has no in-ring skill? No, he is talented in the ring. But it's his character work that gets him over. I have no problem with it. I don't mind it. I just am not somebody who cares that much about character work. So to me, Joey Ryan is not my cup of tea. But I'm not going to complain if someone says Joey Ryan is their favorite professional wrestler going right now. That's totally fine to me. Like, Taya Valkyrie is kind of in the same boat. I admit Taya Valkyrie is a pretty good wrestler. So why isn't she my cup of tea? It's just that her style doesn't just click with me. I don't mind it, but I don't necessarily like it. That's the long and short of that. Anyway, I've been actually kind of blowing through topics. Like I said, not too much really newsworthy or noteworthy has been happening recently that I can think of. I don't want to talk about the AEW advert because I feel like so many people have talked about it at this point with the AEW demolishes NXT thing. So it'd kind of be like beating a dead horse, essentially, where it's like so many people have covered it, you could just probably go watch somebody else's video about it. But I'm trying to think of like what else, because I don't want to jump right into the Royal Rumble just yet. Let's see. Oh, that's what I could talk about. The rise of Keith Lee. So, I know I focus a lot on WWE in these podcasts. New Japan's kind of in like a quiet period right now. World Tag League isn't as big as it used to be. In like in terms of hype, AEW is in a lull period well before possibly well before the next pay-per-view. We don't know when it is. I think I saw some copyright claims come down. Or not copyright claims, trademarks filed. I don't remember what they are off the top of my head, so we could be seeing an AEW pay-per-view announcement sometime soon, maybe on the Christmas episode. Who knows? That'll be fun. Kids will be on their phone at Christmas dinner, and mom will be like, "Put down your phone." And the kid's like, "But mom, there's a AEW tweet about the next pay-per-view." And mom's like, "I don't care." And kids get mad and everything. Yay. So let's talk about Keith Lee. Keith Lee is somebody I've been really high on for years. I feel like I've said this about a lot of indie guys, but like Keith Lee, I know I said about Swerve. I remember I said the exact same thing about Isaiah Scott. But like Keith Lee is another one in that group where I was like, this guy can be something. And now he's getting a chance to show that. And this was my fear. NXT was so loaded with talent that not everybody would get a chance to shine. But with this 2-hour move, a lot more people are getting that chance. Look at Keith Lee, look at Dominik Dijakovic, look at Damian Priest. Damian Priest might have been the quickest signee to takeover that we've seen in a while. I know Nakamura was pretty much signed to take over against Sami Zayn. Priest was signed this year, I believe. It was either really early this year or really late last year. And he made his takeover debut in November of this year. That's a possibly 11-month span where Damian Priest went from being a signee and at the PC to saying your feud is good enough for a takeover finish. That is a big step for somebody in Damian Priest's spot. And I'm very excited to see what else he can do. So it's like this 2-hour move has been beneficial for everybody. But it's really helped Keith Lee. Keith Lee also benefited from the Survivor Series with him being the final member of Team NXT. Surprisingly, it wasn't Tommaso Ciampa like a lot of us probably thought. It came down to Keith Lee versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. Keith Lee showed up and showed out, and now we're going to see... And that reaction he got, probably Hunter and Shawn Michaels were probably backstage, and they heard that, and they're like, what if we run with this for a little bit? Because we don't have a takeover until Portland. And we have Worlds Collide in between. So I'm curious to see how that's going to work. Are like feuds going to be included in the brackets for the men and the women? Are we going to see storyline development? Are we going to see new wrestlers? Are we going to see wrestlers who aren't in any feud now get a spot in those tournaments? Like Pete Dunne, like Killian Dane? I would like for Worlds Collide to be more of a mid-card thing, where the winner gets a North American title shot, or, as of right now, an NXT UK title shot. I feel like more people would rather challenge Roddy Strong than Walter, but that's just me personally. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. But with Keith Lee he's in a triple threat next week with Tommaso Ciampa and Finn Balor, where the winner gets a shot at Adam Cole on December the 18th. December the 18th, they're kind of building to... It seems like it's going to be a little bit of a mini takeover. We also have announced for that show, besides Adam Cole defending his NXT title against the triple threat winner, we also have Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler for Baszler's NXT Women's Championship, which is something I want to talk about here in a little bit. So, this is going to be Keith Lee's early career-defining moment. That Survivor Series Final 2 with Roman Reigns is going to be such a pivotal moment in Keith Lee's WWE career. That's going to be something you see in a possible Hall of Fame package down the line. That is going to be the moment Keith Lee showed up to the WWE world. The wrestling world as a whole knew exactly who he was the minute he signed with WWE. We've known him for so long in the independent scene, but when he signed with WWE, he got put in front of the largest audience he had ever been in front of. And now you're getting to see the fruits of this labor. He's been working at this for years, and now he's on the main stage, and he is the biggest name going for that company, that promotion right now. Keith Lee is going to be a star. Now, I've seen people throw out the idea that Keith Lee should be the one to take the title off of Adam Cole. I don't think so. I think it's just too early to pull the trigger on Adam Cole championship loss. I feel like Finn Balor makes more sense. There's more story there. And then it's going to be interesting to see with Ciampa, because Ciampa's recent comments of he'd rather retire than be on the main roster, where he could easily have a main roster job where he only works the television shows due to his neck injury and nobody would bat an eye at it. Maybe he does like special house shows here and there. So who knows? We'll see if it's a big if now and when Tommaso Ciampa does get called up. Now, I know I said I was going to talk about the NXT Women's Championship, more specifically the NXT Women's Champion and Shayna Baszler, but I want to talk about the Royal Rumble first. So, Survivor Series is now gone and done. Honestly, of the big four, it might be my third favorite. SummerSlam is just like, oh, it's there. There's nothing like super special about it, so it's like, eh. At least that's my personal opinion. I have no like emotional or actual connection to SummerSlam. WrestleMania is the biggest show of the year for pro wrestling in a whole, so that's always really cool. You have the Royal Rumble, which is always a fun concept where 30 people fight for one championship main event spot at WrestleMania. And then Survivor Series, you have the elimination threat, and if we keep this brand warfare thing going, it keeps things interesting because of the fact that the rosters are changing year in and year out. Let's see how things look in another year. So there is that. Now, with the Royal Rumble this year, I said this at first. This was well before we even knew NXT was going to be involved in the brand warfare for the Survivor Series. This might be the first time in a very long time where we don't know who's winning what Rumble. And as the month has gone on and people have come to form and stood out and been interesting, now we're kind of seeing a bit of a clearer picture. But it seems like it's only going to be a few names that could possibly do it. And now we're starting to like fine pick and fine tune and finesse things like this. I had a scenario in my head where if Rey Mysterio won the WWE Championship from Brock Lesnar, it wouldn't be Dominic wrestling him at WrestleMania. It would be Andrade. Give those two 25 minutes in a WWE Championship match, you are going to see a thing of beauty. That's that. It's not going to happen now because Rey's United States champion currently. So, yeah. Now, let's start with the men's, because the men's I feel a little less confident in. Right now, if you asked me, the early betting odds favorite would be Kevin Owens. Now, do I trust WWE to do that? No. Not in the slightest. But right now, he's the early betting odds favorite. He's got a hot feud going with Seth Rollins, where he's being built to look like the top babyface of the company, where Seth is looking like the biggest heel, even though he's technically a good guy. So it's like, what the hell? And Owens makes sense too, because of the fact that he lost his Universal Championship to Goldberg. He never got a fair rematch for it. Now, yes, I know technically the rematch clause has been thrown out the door, but that's from like 2 years ago. I'm surprised I remember that, but I don't remember things that happened like yesterday. But still, the point is that there is right now he would be the one that makes the most sense, because of the fact you have that hot feud with Rollins, his history with matches like these where you have to have a career-defining moment. Owens has had quite a few of those with his time in Ring of Honor, his time in NXT. So I feel like he does make sense to win the Rumble, but it's also kind of concerning because of the fact that the champions are Lesnar and The Fiend. I'm pretty sure Owens is smart enough to not want to play with The Fiend. That leaves Brock Lesnar. And as much as I want to see the title go off of Brock, do they really pull the trigger with Owens to be the one to do it? Because Owens is just, he's really talented, yes, don't get me wrong, but do they see him on a Brock Lesnar level? He signed a 5-year deal worth a lot of money. I know that much. So who really knows if they do? But it's something that's going to be worth watching to see where exactly this Seth Rollins feud goes. Seth is also a possibility, but a very, very slim possibility, because that would make it heel versus heel, and it would be Rollins' second win in a row, and fans really don't like Rollins anymore. So, what about his former Shield brother, Roman Reigns? Roman, after this feud with Corbin, it doesn't look like he's going to really have much going on. He doesn't really seem like there's going to be any real story for him. So, where does Roman go? I saw a theory, or like a pitch online of this, where Roman challenges Shinsuke Nakamura for the IC title at WrestleMania, wins, and then we have the Roman Reigns Open Challenge all month, or like all through the summer. They didn't say like when he would lose it or who he would lose it to, but like an idea like that wouldn't be bad. But also, it's Roman Reigns, it's SmackDown. He's been built as the big star of the show, so why is he not the big star? You could see him win the Rumble and then get a championship match at WrestleMania and be in one of the main events. And it would make sense because Roman Reigns is one of the many faces of WWE. If you were to ask me who the faces of WWE are, it's Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair. Now, those are the faces, but think about who Roman would have to challenge if he wins the Rumble. Brock Lesnar for the third time in 6 years, or The Fiend, a.k.a. one of the most over guys in pro wrestling. Do you really want to see Roman versus Brock for the fourth time in 6 years? Because of their match at SummerSlam in 2015, I believe it was? Or do you want to see Roman versus the hottest guy in the company, probably win, and then be the most hated guy in the company? Because it's obvious they want Roman to be one of the good guys. So it wouldn't make sense for you to have him be the one to beat the Fiend and then get all this heat from it. Now, whoever does beat the Fiend for the title, I think they lose it to Roman. But Roman's not going to be the one to take it from the Fiend. They don't want to have their top star get booed out of the building every single week. This is why like the men's Rumble is kind of tricky this year, because there's no like real storyline investment in it. Where I'm just sitting here like, who can I really like connect dots with to make sense? And like those two are my early favorites. Owens and Reigns are my early favorites. There's a couple of guys who I'm interested to see how they do. I want to see how Aleister Black does, possibly Buddy Murphy. Ali is another interesting one. Andrade. But if I had to pick a dark horse, and I've been saying this guy would not surprise me to win a Rumble, if not this year, in the next two. AJ Styles. Styles recently lost the United States Championship. I don't think he's going to win it back from Rey Mysterio or whoever wins the ladder match at TLC, possibly. If that's even the route they're going. So, that means AJ has nothing going on. So, where is AJ's WrestleMania going to go? What's his story going to be? Is it going to be something with the OC? Is it going to be OC versus New Day and like a brand supremacy thing? Is it going to be OC Undisputed Era? Maybe. Who knows? But I think AJ makes sense. Think about his entire career. AJ Styles has accomplished so much. NWA World Champion, TNA World Champion, Ring of Honor Champion, WWE Champion, WWE United States Champion. He's won ladder matches. He's won steel cage matches. He's won a plethora of other titles. and he has so many other accolades. He's a former, he's a one-time at least Wrestler of the Year. He's done it all except win a Royal Rumble match. AJ Styles would not surprise me to be a dark horse in this type of match. Like I said, I don't think he's going to win it this year. If you had to ask me who I am betting on to win the Royal Rumble in 2020, it's Kevin Owens or Roman Reigns. But AJ Styles is one I have my eye on for 2021. It'll be interesting to see where stories goes because AJ Styles has said that this contract that he's on right now, he signed a 3-year deal, I believe it was earlier this year. It might have been like mid-August to September-ish, if I remember correctly. He signed a 3-year deal. He said that is going to be his last pro wrestling contract. His last full-time at least. Maybe he does a part-time deal. I don't know. I don't know what's going on through AJ's head. But this means we only have now 2.5 more years of full-time AJ Styles in the ring. There's so much you still want to see. He also hasn't won the Intercontinental Championship yet, I know, but he's on the wrong show right now. To be completely honest, he's on the wrong show because it's on SmackDown. Which is kind of why I don't want Roman to win it at WrestleMania, because probably maybe 2 weeks after WrestleMania, we have the draft, and you could move the Intercontinental title to Raw and move the US to SmackDown. Just so that way you get like a little shift in the mid-card, looks a little different. But yeah, AJ is going to be the one to watch, and I'm also going to put an NXT idea out there for some people. And it might be dumb, but it does go off of what I said a little earlier. An NXT star I would watch for in this Rumble, possibly Tommaso Ciampa. Let me explain. Tommaso Ciampa went on Lillian Garcia's Raising Glory podcast and said that if he gets called up to Raw or SmackDown, he will retire and be a producer. Because of his neck injuries and his issues with injuries throughout his career, he's, quote-unquote, to borrow an actual quote from Edge, he's wrestling on borrowed time. So, with his bump card getting more and more filled up, he doesn't have super long left in the ring. He's still got plenty of time, but he doesn't have as long as he could have if he didn't have to have neck fusion surgery. So, and somebody else put this thought in my head. I would be so disappointed if Tommaso Ciampa does not get one WrestleMania. Just one. If he gets one, I'll be super excited and super happy. But if he doesn't, it's going to feel disappointing. Same goes for Johnny Gargano. If I had to pick 2 NXT guys to watch, it's going to be those 2. So, you look at those 2. They've said they're NXT for life. I still don't buy that Gargano is. And I still see a scenario where it just works for him on the main roster. Does he want to wrestle 100 and 200 some odd days in a year? Probably not. Maybe like the house shows, you start to like have like a certain group run the house shows. Smaller names, maybe 1 or 2 big names, something like that. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. I just have ideas in my head. But those 2 I could see having one WrestleMania moment. It would just feel so wrong for them to come so far in their careers to not get that one moment. That is, like the men's Rumble, like I said earlier, is really hard to look at right now, especially because of the fact we don't know a lot. There's still so much we have to figure out for that match. Like, what's the storyline going to be going into the match? What's the entry order going to be? It's always weird because like you don't know the entry order, then halfway through the rope, you get to number 30 and like half the field's already eliminated. So it's like, well, now I can kind of pick out a winner from a thinned out field. That's why I like to pick a winner at the very beginning. Going into January, I like to have a winner picked out. Last year, I said the men was going to be Seth Rollins and the women was going to be Becky Lynch. I was right. The year before, I had Shinsuke Nakamura and Asuka. So I am on a 2-year correct streak. Two years in a row, I've gotten both Rumbles right. I'm not going to have a winner going into January this year because of the fact we don't know so much. And there's so few people who are in meaningful feuds that you can't really decipher who's going to be a legitimate contender at this point. But if I had to pick for the men, there are two guys who I have as favorites, Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns. There are two guys, there's a dark horse I have in AJ Styles, and there are two guys from NXT that I think are going to be worth keeping an eye on in this Rumble, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. Now let's get to the women's. The women's match, there's no real NXT person who can make sense. I see a weird scenario in my head, possibly, of Rhea Ripley. Let me explain that before I actually explain who my favorites are. This is not a dark horse for me this year. This is a crazy, weird scenario that's in my head. Rhea Ripley does not win the NXT Women's Championship from Shayna Baszler due to the Four Horsewomen. Rhea Ripley instead gets called up and gets a championship match at WrestleMania somehow, some other way. Possibly wins the Rumble, possibly wins an Elimination Chamber match. I don't know. But the problem is, with that Rhea Ripley scenario, there are already two stories that have gone on for a little bit that make so much sense to be the WrestleMania feuds. So that's why I think Rhea Ripley has to win on December 18th to set the one up. Spoilers, you probably already know who one of them is. And she is actually legitimately, right now, the only person that makes sense to win the Women's Royal Rumble to me. There's another one that makes some sense, but you can tell that story without the Rumble win. I want to explain what I think is going to happen to Rhea Ripley first, though. I think Rhea Ripley does win the title on December 18th from Shayna Baszler, and then goes to TakeOver Portland, wins there, maybe a couple other title defenses here and there beforehand and after the takeover. So we get to take over Tampa. Rhea Ripley loses the title there and maybe a multi-person match. Because I think one of two things is going to happen. And it's going to be one of two people getting called up next year after WrestleMania. It's either going to be Rhea Ripley or Io Shirai. Both make sense, but I think only one goes. Is there a scenario where both go? Absolutely. But then, well, this is the thing with the NXT women's division. It's so deep and there's so much potential there that you could lose 3 stars that year. Spoiler for whoever doesn't understand, who I think is definitely winning the Royal Rumble. I think it's Shayna Baszler for the women. You could lose 3 stars in Baszler, Ripley, and Shirai, but still have so much talent with Bianca Belair, Toni Storm, Candice LeRae, Mia Yim, Dakota Kai, Tegan Nox. And there's still 2 people at the PC who we haven't seen on NXT TV consistently yet, Deonna Purrazzo and Chelsea Green. If you get those 2 on TV with Toni Storm and everybody else I just listed, like I already forgot what that list was, along with anybody else you can get in, Shotzi Blackheart's on that list, you have such a talented women's division that even if you lose 3 huge stars, you can put in 3 other people and say, we're not missing a step. We're telling these stories now, enjoy these women, and we're still going to develop the likes of Aaliyah, Vanessa Bourne, and Xia Li. Do I think Aaliyah, Vanessa Bourne, or Xia Li ever see the main roster? Maybe in 3 to 4 years. But I don't think they're going to go anywhere anytime soon. Those 3 are a work in progress right now. And what I would love to see WWE do, and maybe this could be the topic next week, work with Evolve, Progress, WXW, all the people you have working relationships with, and get your talent on those shows. So that way they can develop and work with another locker room and learn some new skills and new talents. But like I said, that'll be more next week. So, like I said, spoiler, the person who I think is winning the Women's Royal Rumble is Shayna Baszler. The story with Becky Lynch is there to write itself. Do you have Ronda Rousey get involved? Hell no. Keep her as far away from WWE as possible. I do not want her back personally. Personally, I do not like Ronda Rousey. It just doesn't click with me, and I don't think she's great. She's good in the ring. She took to it faster than anybody else that I've seen. Maybe Kurt Angle, but she took to wrestling so fast, yes. But then it was the Roman Reigns effect, the John Cena effect, even the Hulk Hogan effect. She was shoved down our throats for so long, and it was just like, fans eventually were like, we don't want this anymore. We don't want Ronda Rousey. When you go back to January of this year, no, last year, excuse me, I'm crossing my timelines. If you go back to January of last year, all we wanted was Ronda Rousey. Fast forward to November, December, we're like, we don't want Ronda. We're tired of Ronda. So you can't, I don't want this to have a Ronda Rousey effect on Baszler versus Lynch. I want the build to be Baszler won Survivor Series for NXT. Becky got the last laugh, excuse me. So you build a story around that, around Shayna Baszler and the Four Horsewomen's connection. You don't have Rousey show up, but you have her get name dropped somewhere. And these two just get to have one of the better matches in the WrestleMania card in my head right now. It makes sense to me because of the fact that Shayna Baszler has done anything and everything possible in NXT. There is nothing there left for her. The only thing left is for her to make the jump. The lateral move to Monday Night Raw to challenge Becky Lynch. I think this is going to be the main event of the Royal Rumble, the Women's Rumble match. And Lynch versus Baszler, that could be the main event of WrestleMania. It depends on what other stories gain traction through that time period from January to April. I had to think when WrestleMania was. But you go from January to April, maybe the Brock Lesnar Kevin Owens storyline picks up. Maybe Roman versus Fiend has a huge build. I don't know. But right now in my head, Lynch versus Baszler is the main event of WrestleMania. And the women main event, the Royal Rumble show. However, let's say maybe, just maybe, hypothetically, maybe Becky Lynch costs Shayna Baszler the Royal Rumble. And you set the story up that way. Who then wins the Royal Rumble? Like I said, only one other person makes sense to win the Royal Rumble. But she doesn't need to win the match to start this story. That is Sasha Banks. If you had asked me after WrestleMania who I thought was winning the Royal Rumble, I never in a million years would have said Sasha Banks. Was it because she wasn't on the roster? Yes. Was it because of the fact that since she's and if you'd asked me that question, oh God, math again. Like 2 months after she came back, is she going to win the Royal Rumble? I would have said no, because there's no momentum in her sales right now. There's nothing there. But you look at the SmackDown Women's Champion. It's Bayley. Her quote-unquote, and I hate that I'm using quotes around this, because they probably are, but her quote-unquote best friend. Her best friend is the SmackDown Women's Champion. Her best friend is in the spotlight. Her best friend is the face of the SmackDown Women's division. Sasha is going to see this and say, I want that. And those two don't need the Royal Rumble win in their storyline. Sasha could turn on Bayley any point from February 1st to April 5th. You have that whole time span to turn Sasha. Or turn Bayley. Either or. It's that simple. Maybe Sasha wins a number one contenders match, and Bayley's like, no, I don't want to defend my title against you. And then attacks her. Or Sasha, it's like a Miz TV segment or something, and you have Sasha and Bayley as the guests, and Sasha just attacks Bayley. Now, is that a heel turn? Is that a face turn? I don't know. It depends on what color hair Sasha Banks has, apparently. I'm not going to lie, I do like that she has like two different looks for face and heel, but it's just that it's still a little weird in my brain. Like, blue is a nice color in Star Wars. Red's bad. So it's like a weird thing in my brain with like, this is why I'm a nerd, okay? This is why I'm a nerd. But you look at it, that feud does not need a Rumble win. Like I said, you could set it up at any point before WrestleMania. Baszler would benefit from a Rumble win even more because it would be one of her first matches on the main roster. It could even be her first match. Have her lose to Ripley and don't have her wrestle on TV until the Royal Rumble. It would be interesting. And like I said, like I like to have a dark horse in these. So like Baszler and Banks are like my two early favorites, with Baszler getting a huge edge because Banks doesn't necessarily need the Rumble win, like I've said a couple times now. But you look at the women's division, there's Charlotte Flair, but don't really want to see Charlotte versus Becky again. Charlotte versus Bayley would be for the, I don't know, third, fourth time in the past year. So, like, dark horse-wise, it's kind of hard to have a pick. But one that I would like to see, and it kind of depends on the women's tag team scene, would be Nikki Cross. Because of the fact she's, like, chaotic and a little Tasmanian devil, she could go out there, tear it up, and surprise everybody and win the Royal Rumble match. Like, I don't have much to go off on this, because, like, literally I thought about it, and she could work. She could be the next face of the women's division. Granted, with her current school schedule, because she's going for her... I think she got her master's. I think she's going for her doctorate. She's going for a super high up degree in history. Given her school schedule, she might not want to have the pressure of being champion in the middle of the semester. So it would be more of a summertime reign you would see from Nikki Cross, which part of me thinks that's why Nikki and Alexa dropped the tag titles, but I hate being logistical on things like this because it takes a lot of time. But that's my early Rumble predictions for the women. Baszler and Sasha Banks are like the two early favorites. Like I said, with Baszler with a huge edge. Dark horse is Nikki Cross. And NXT is going to be involved, obviously. Maybe we see Toni Storm again. Maybe we see Candice LeRae. Thank you. Brain. I think like the first Women's Royal Rumble, I didn't mind the lack of NXT because it's the first one and you want to pay homage, however you say the word, to the past eras of women's wrestling in WWE. So I was totally fine with that. Now, in the second one, you had a lot less. I don't even remember if there was any past women's wrestlers in that field. I'm trying to run through it in my brain. I don't remember any. So, like, now you can focus on NXT, NXT UK. Maybe we see Kaylee Ray in there, or a Viper, if Piper Niven, I think is her name in NXT UK. If she takes the title from Kaylee Ray, take over Blackpool too. Who knows? We'll see. That's it for this week. I'm going to try and keep these short, back to under an hour if possible. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, you can follow myself on Twitter at Churro Soldier. You can follow this podcast, the Podcast Armchair. You can follow All Things Combat, where we cover professional wrestling, boxing, and MMA, over on Twitter at Things Combat. And you can follow The Cauldron, which I also write for as the sports editor, over at CSU Cauldron. And this past issue was our last issue of the semester, so now we're going to be off until spring semester, where we will pick back up with me being the sports editor. But in this last issue, I had 3 articles. One was an opinion piece about the importance of time management. Excuse me, burping. And I had 2 sports ones. One was about the Cleveland State wrestling team getting its season started and the great performances a lot of guys have put in already. And another one was about the women's basketball team having won 5 in a row, which now they've extended their win streak to 6 in a row. And they're starting the season off 6-1. They're looking pretty good to start the season. But that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hit the like button if you liked this episode. If you really liked it, think about hitting subscribe. This is just for fun. Leave a comment if you want. I don't mind it. You don't have to, but if you want to, I'd appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you guys here next week with another topic, which I said would be WWE and their working relationships with companies. See you guys then.